Hi everybody, it's Kay. I hope you're well. Today I'm trying something a little different. I have yet to film a video in which I don't feature my face, but I suppose there's a first time for everything. The incense in my holder is Urban Earth sandalwood. It's not the best quality incense out there, but the smell is one of my favorites and it helps me ground, which is something that I'm going to need for this video. I'm actually having coffee for this video instead of tea. I often have tea when I film, but I really was in the mood for some coffee, and so that's what I have instead of tea today. After I did my coffee house decks video, a few people asked what my go-to coffee was, and on a daily basis I do just a simple pour over with heavy cream, pink salt, and cinnamon. And I put extra cinnamon in this today just because cinnamon is also something that helps me ground, which, as I said, I'm going to need for this video. With all of that out of the way, now I'll talk about my purpose and intention for this video. Yesterday, on the 18th of February, the sun entered the mutable water sign of Pisces. Pisces season is a very bittersweet time for me. On the one hand, it is that final transition from winter to spring. Of course, with that often comes itchy, watery eyes and a stuffy nose, but I would take that in order to get a little bit of consistent daylight back into my life. Often at this time, I'm really feeling a bit heavy just because winter has been so long. But with the promise of spring, there is still some melancholy. Pisces season is when my mom passed. This year will be 8 years. She passed in 2015, and she died in early March. So this time of year for me is often a bit hard. That being said, March has often been a month of significant life changes for me, particularly when it comes to changing my physical location. I have moved in the month of March more than any other month of the year. I don't anticipate moving house this year, so a lot of my attention is going to be paid to the remembrance of the time of my mom's passing. And the thing I've realized over the years is that grief is a funny thing. Sometimes you don't feel it really at all, and then other times it will sneak up on you almost and sort of tap you on the shoulder and say, "I'm still here. Do you remember me?" And you can get caught off guard. It isn't predictable. The cup that my coffee is in actually belonged to my mom. I rarely use it, and this cup was one of the first things I took from her house. I took our old photographs. I took anything she had related to my son, anything from my childhood that was still there, and this cup. And I don't entirely know why. It's just an ordinary cup, but it's one that she used somewhat regularly, and I just felt the need to use it today. I have mentioned in other videos that my mom and I did not have a good relationship. Her mental health declined severely when I was about 7, and things just kind of spiraled after that. And after I became a mom myself, there were a lot of moments of arguing and animosity and very unhealthy patterns of behavior, both from her and from me. I've also mentioned in other videos how I am mostly in the acceptance and forgiveness stage of my grief and sense of loss regarding our relationship and how things weren't reconciled before she died. But yesterday, when the sun entered Pisces, I drew my anchor card like I have done for the past several seasons. This practice has come to mean so much to me, and it makes me feel centered and whole. And the card I drew was the Possibilities card from the absolutely beautiful Soul Trees Oracle. I love this deck so much. This is an earlier printing of this. I believe the box and the design as a whole is a bit different now, but I love this box. It has that lovely linen texture, and it reminds me very much of an older style jewelry box. But pulling that Possibilities card for me almost felt like a weight taken off of my shoulders, because this winter has been a bit hard, and I just found this to be a bit of a refreshing change of energy, because in Capricorn season it was suggested that I would need to practice patience, which was so accurate it kind of almost chokes me up to think about it now. And Aquarius season suggested that I might need to be a bit of a fighter, which did come up in very unexpected ways, including fights with myself and my perceptions on things, and some patterns of thinking that I had gotten myself into and couldn't seem to find a way out of. After drawing this Possibilities card, I felt this sudden urge to do a tarot reading for Pisces season, which is something that I have not felt called to do in ages. I would just pull my anchor card and then my cards for each decan, and I would read tarot intermittently throughout the season as I felt I needed it. But this urge to do a tarot reading was so strong I couldn't ignore it. So that is what I am going to do today. I'm also going to use not just one but two tarot decks, just because I have two separate kind of areas that I want to examine, and I really felt called to use a different deck for each of those. What I intend to do is with one deck, sort of a linear timeline, sort of dividing the season into thirds. So essentially first decan, second decan, third decan, or you can think of it as early season, mid-season, late season. And for that, I'm going to be using the Tarot of Mystical Moments. I've said before, I'm still getting to know this deck, and deck pairings and aesthetics are usually not a huge priority or thing for me, but I just couldn't help but notice how similar in coloring the guidebook for that tarot is with the Possibilities card. They're so alike. It's kind of uncanny. Something I will actually not be doing for this reading is looking at the bottom of either tarot deck, which kind of astounds me because I always do that. But when this idea popped into my head, I heard very specifically, do not look at the bottom of the decks. You don't need the bottom of the decks. And so I'm not going to look at the bottom of the tarot decks, which is so weird for me because that is a practice that I almost always have done. The purpose for the second deck is essentially to bring in an elementally based snapshot, and for that I am using the Arcana Tarot playing cards, light edition by Dead on paper. These decks are incredible. The numbered minors are playing cards with the suit notations, and there is a full major arcana as well as the courts, and I can never unsee a former colleague when I see that Emperor card. But the art in this deck is incredible. I actually do wish that they would come out with a larger version just so that detail would pop out a little bit more, but it's amazing. I wanted to use a pip deck for the elemental piece just because for me that is a very clear, no nonsense way of looking at energy, and for the elemental positions that's really important to me. So the Tarot of Mystical Moments will represent sort of the linear timeline, and the Arcana Tarot playing cards will represent the elemental aspects of life, if you will. I will set these aside for the time being and begin with the, as always, the obligatory oiling of the hands with my Aveda Shampure Oil. This scent is one of my favorites, and like the sandalwood incense and the cinnamon, it really helps me to ground. I really brought out all of my, or most of my, I suppose, sensory arsenal, if you will, for grounding and just kind of being centered. I felt like for the past few days, especially, that's just been, the grounding piece has been a bit absent. And I knew if I wanted to do this reading in the way that I felt it needed to be done, I really need to be in my body as much as possible. I'm now shuffling the Tarot of Mystical Moments, and that blingy edging on on this deck and this shiny cardstock is really making the light go a bit crazy. So apologies for the kind of strobe effect that's happening here. It's just catching that edging. I'm still thinking I might want to take that off, but I haven't decided if it's worth the effort yet. As I said, I'm still getting to know this deck, so I will be taking a look at the guidebook for the cards that are selected. I will divide the deck into thirds. I will pick up the middle pile, stack it on top of the left pile, and then gather both of those piles onto the right pile and bring it back to center. And then I will draw from the top. I will place them face down so I can look at them one at a time. So once again, the card on the left is representing the first part of the season, the second card, the middle part of the season, and the third card, the latter part of the season. And this is Pisces season, specifically. Now I will shuffle the Arcana Tarot playing cards. I am a side shuffler primarily just because I find I can make anything work with side shuffling, and shuffling for me is one of those things. I think I'm kind of in a minority where shuffling is really not a fundamental part of the process for me. If anything, it's more of a means to an end, and that sounds awful, but it's not an activity that I find really helps me prepare for the reading. It's just kind of getting the job done of mixing the cards. So side shuffling for me works really well because I can make it work with pretty much any type of card. I'm now laying the elemental positions. I associate the top position, the north position, if you will, with the element of earth. The position on the right represents air or east. The position on the bottom is south and fire, and the position on the left is water and west. And I just showed you the back of the back of the Arcana Tarot playing cards, which technically is reversible because one part of the tree is full on one half and it's full and in bloom, and the other half is not. And one more look at the possibilities card, and it really makes me think of winter into spring because that indigo color of the tree is very wintry, but there's that promise of the green grass that will come with spring. So that was just a little sort of thought I had going in. I'm now going to flip the first card over for the beginning of Pisces season, and when I did flip this over, a part of me almost cried because I got the Knight of Cups. I'll touch on those feelings in a moment, but as I said, I'm still getting to know this deck, and so I will go to the guidebook entry, which reads, "On a floating water lily, the refined Knight of Cups is playing a lovely melody coming directly from her heart. She is in touch with her intuition and emotions, and she uses them masterfully to charm and attract others. The sky is filled with shining stars that illuminate the scenery in a romantic way, providing the perfect backdrop for her poignant songs and stories. Upright meaning refinement, sensitivity, deep emotions, charm, romantic nature. Reverse meaning melodrama, emotional instability, coldness, self-indulgence, and temperamental." I take all of those meanings into account when I'm working with tarot, just because I view the cards in a more holistic way, and any of those can really apply at any time, and also spread context matters. I felt a lot of emotion when I saw this card, because the video I uploaded last to my channel was my part 2 of the Working with the Court Cards series I'm doing, in which I discussed the Knights. And when I got to the Knight of Cups, I mentioned how in my early 20s, late teens, sort of in that age, I really felt I embodied the Knight of Cups energy a lot. And sometimes it got me into trouble, but in the healthy embodiment, I really felt very much like myself. I felt very authentic to me. And I actually thought about that this morning after I woke up and asked the question, whatever happened to that girl? Whatever happened to that energy? And what happened was I ended up being a mom, and some more, the pragmatism sort of ended up taking over from this energy of being a little bit more free in the emotional realm regarding idealism. I think I'm kind of an idealist, really, at heart. If you're familiar with the Enneagram system, I am a type 4, and type 4s are considered to be the romantic individual. And often I really do feel that's very much a big part of who I am at my core. And I think this just might be a reminder for me to, it's okay to get back in touch with that energy. And I love that she's this kind of strumming, it's like an instrument made from an actual heart. And I just think that's really powerful. That's very visceral. That's very visceral fire of water for me. And that's a good reminder, especially having just done that video yesterday at the very beginning of Pisces season. For me, and as far as it's a court, and so it's behavior, and it's very much me, and that card is very much for me. That is my inner Knight of Cups saying it's okay to let me out for a while. Let me out to play. It's really okay. It's fine. The guidebook used the word poignant for that card, and I really do feel that that applies to the context of where I am, and what I've been feeling. That's an absolutely beautiful start to this reading, and I am so thrilled with that card. And coupled with the possibilities, my possibilities anchor card, it just opens up a lot for me in my heart and in my feelings, and I love that so much. I'll now turn over the middle card, representing the middle part of Pisces season, essentially when March begins, and I have the 10 of Cups. This reading is becoming a bit reminiscent of that 9-card spread reading that I did, in which a lot of water energy was featured. And in this 10 of Cups, we have a couple that appears to be half human and half fish or other aquatic species, with what might be their children underneath the surface there. And I'm turning to the guidebook, and the entry reads, "The 10 of Cups is a scene full of peace and harmony. A couple, half human, half fish, emerges from the sea to watch a rainbow brightening up the sky. They are connected by their true everlasting love. Their 10 small fry are protected underneath the mother's plant-like dress. This card affirms the depth of family bonds and reminds you to count your blessings." Upright meaning bliss, family, harmony, contentment, protection, blessings. Reverse meaning lack of gratitude, focused on self, family drama. The tens and the minors for me are often about transcendence and or transition within the realm of relationships, feelings, and emotions. I don't automatically make the happy family or not association. That's very typical of RWS Ten of Cups. I don't automatically make that association in a reading, but because it's here, because this is an RWS based deck, it is here, and this represents second deacon Pisces, and that is the deacon in which my mom passed. And the fact that I have the Ten of Cups here and it speaks of family, I really feel that this is the time the year where I really just transcend my current processing of her passing. It's time to deepen that acceptance, I feel, and forgiveness piece. That to me is very obvious, and it's I feel I've come a long way there, but there are some things that I'm still holding on to, and I feel, especially with the progression of this reading and how it's going, it's time to move beyond where I currently am. That's a very on point and beautiful reminder. Now I'm going to flip over the third card representing the latter half of Pisces season, and I have the Tower. I actually love the Tower. It's one of those cards that when it comes up, I just stop and I check in with myself and I ask the question, what am I holding on to? Like, this figure is literally holding on to the tower that is exploding directly in front of her, and even their hair is becoming part of the smoke. It's becoming one with that chaotic destruction. And for me, the tower is very much often a somewhat of an ego death. There is something that you are holding, your ego is holding on to for protection, and it's time to let that go. The guidebook entry for this card reads, "On this card, we see a woman grasping a tower, attempting to prevent it from collapsing. But the tower, which is situated on a volcano, is already beginning to explode, and there's nothing that can stop the destruction. A big crack is splitting the building, and rocks and dark ash fill the air. This woman's hair has turned into smoke, so she is unable to extricate herself from this traumatic event. Yet the tower may represent falsehoods and deceptions that need to be destroyed. Upright meaning crisis, chaos, traumatic event, abrupt change, fall from grace. Reverse meaning containment, smooth transition, preventing disaster." This is an absolutely exquisite deck, and this is an absolutely exquisite reading. I'm just really completely blown away by these cards. This is the Tarot of Mystical Moments, once again, and it is published by US Games, and the author and artist is Katrine Wells Stein. Back to the Tower. I love the Tower, actually. And when I sat with this particular card for a couple of minutes, I was reminded of my mom's ashes, and there is still a bit of her ashes that I have not scattered. I've kept them. I thought I would probably always keep them. I think part of that is maybe, out of guilt. But as I'm getting to this point, and that Ten of Cups is leading me back to the ocean, that environment that they are in. And my mom loved the ocean. And I'm kind of making the connection that the rest of her ashes need to be scattered in the ocean, and it's time to let it go. very profound. I'm also still holding on to some of her possessions, which really aren't even usable and that hold no sentimental value to me. And I feel with this tower, that is worthy of examination as far as letting those items go as well. So, in the context of a timeline, I'm really feeling these 3 cards in this reading are asking me to examine in practice in the first part of Capricorn season to just really get back in touch with my visceral fire of water energy, my creative expressive energy. I really felt the need to make this video during this time, and I feel like I'm being a bit, emotive just because of the subject and where I have been kind of in my feelings. But this card is telling me that it's okay to do that. And then progressing from there, the 10 of Cups is just, it's time to transcend those feelings of guilt and deepen that acceptance and forgiveness piece of this grief process. And further on from there, maybe consider letting some of those things associated with my mom, including her ashes and her possessions, letting those go and letting the guilt go. That is a lot to chew on emotionally, but I think it's needed. It's time. Now I'm going to take a look at the elementally based positions that I have laid, and remember to always relate the reading back to my anchor card, my possibilities card, because that anchor card, I call it an anchor card for a reason. It's kind of, if I feel lost, that is something I can always go back to. And it can serve as sort of an anchor to relate different aspects of the reading. I felt called to flip over the East position, representing the mental aspects of life and communication, and I got the Hermit. And the first thing I thought of when I saw this card, and isn't it beautiful? I love this deck so much. The first thing I thought of when I saw this card is how it relates to my main tarot card of winter, which is the Two of Swords. The Two of Swords for me is very much a card of listening and not speaking. It's that internal processing of the mind and taking in. Twos are very receptive for me. If you think High Priestess, it's kind of in that same energy. Twos are receptive. It's a taking in. It's a taking in of information. And since this is a major arcana, it's the Hermit, and Hermit is number 9. There's my Two of Swords. Hermit is number 9, and 9s for me are often about attainment and culmination. In the Hermit's case of wisdom and experience. And this is really making me feel that I just need to be as receptive as I can in my listening. And because it's a major arcana, perhaps it will lead or manifest into something bigger than I might be conceptualizing now. So maybe just keep my thoughts to myself in certain aspects. The Hermit is also earth. The earth is it's the grounding element. It's the element that kind of slows things down. It's long-term focused, and so I'm just kind of feeling that in order for something to come about for the long term, it might be in my best interest to just keep my thoughts sort of directed inward and be receptive to what others say. Cledons, if you will. This is very much Cledon energy for me. Wisdom, attainment of wisdom through the practice of careful observance and listening. Now I will go to the bottom card, which represents for me fire and south. And I have the Four of Spades, which is the Four of Swords. The sword is present there on the right. Four of Air, or Four of Swords. Four is also for me a receptive number. It's a number of stabilization and keeping things constant, consistency. Four can be a number of routine. Four of Wands, particular, is my card, usually of routine. But in the case of Swords and in the realm of fire, of that creative energy, I'm really feeling that a process, that something that would be good for me during this time is to be consistent with some of my creative output, just be stable in that regard, which kind of relates back to especially during this time when I have my Knight of Cups and I'm just kind of feeling the need to be a bit expressive, I suppose, and kind of create from the inner depths of me, from my heart. But it's also a reminder to not get carried away and to be consistent, but also to not do too much, because swords are mental. So it's just, keep my thinking regarding my creative projects stable and be consistent, but just not get carried away and do too much. Now I'll go to the west position, which is water, so emotions, feelings, relationships. And there's the Nine of Hearts, which is the Nine of Cups. So I have a water energy within the water position. Whenever this happens, I mentioned this in my 9-card spread video, my VR to Meg, whenever I get a matching element within an element position within that same element, I consider it to be a bit auspicious. But again, it's also a reminder that you can embody and have or express too much of a good thing. There can be an oversaturation of energy if you're not consciously being aware of your thoughts and feelings and what you're saying and what you're doing. But again, going back to the Hermit, when I was talking about the nines for me are about attainment, culmination, kind of the peak of the suit. And for me, this is telling me, because it's the Nine of Cups, just it's okay to be happy. It's okay to feel emotionally fulfilled in my life and in my relationships, and it might be prompting me to examine where in my life I am not feeling fulfilled, and maybe take a look at those areas a little bit more deeply. I'm really feeling this with friends and family. Maybe look at those relationships that have gotten a bit distant, and maybe make some of those connections, but maybe not right away, just because of that receptive energy of the Hermit and of the Four, but just that is something to be aware of and mindful of. In addition, I do have that 10 of Cups present in the middle. So the 9 of Cups to 10 of Cups is a progression. So this also suggests to me that process of kind of examining my emotional landscape might aid me in that process and that practice of working on letting go a lot of that, the guilt associated with my mom. And now for the final card in the north position, which for me represents Earth. I have the Page of Clubs, which would be Wands, and in my realm of Earth, I know exactly what this means, and and as I've said before, courts are behavior. as I said with the Knight of Cups, this is my behavior. I know it's my behavior related to passionate curiosity within my physical material world. And I know exactly what this is referring to. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail here just because it's very much something I'm kind of keeping to myself for now. I'm kind of being that hermit a little bit in this regard, but this is giving me an indicator that what I was kind of processing within this particular area of my life, it is worthy of consideration as to whether or not it might be a beneficial step or thing for me to do. And the physical is about more, earth is about more than just money. It's also, it's time, it is energy, which I feel we, those are finite resources, and we only have so much of each really to go around. And the pages are curious for curiosity's sake, and earth for me is also the body. And so this is prompting me as well to I've been thinking a lot about trying some new forms of movement. I'm always looking for new ways to move my body in a healthy way, and this is really prompting me to kind of look at that a little more deeply, in addition to some other things associated with the physical and the material. Doing this reading with these decks at this time, it brought me more than I could have anticipated, and I was right to listen to my intuitive nudge telling me you need to do this reading and you need to film it. I'm not sure if I would have processed the reading in the same way had I just done it for myself without filming and maybe just writing some stuff in my journal. But I really feel that going through this process, filming it, speaking aloud, it took this to a different level for me. If you've made it through to the end, please know that I appreciate you. That's all I have for this video. Take care and be well.